They say the bones still remember, buried beneath moss, stone, and silence, on windswept isles lost in the northern sea, lie altars not of worship, but of hunger. These were not lands of myth. They were real, remote, forgotten. And within them, the ancient Celts carved a truth the world has spent centuries trying to forget. Because in these islands, ritual was not spoken. It was swallowed. The Druids, those veiled priests of forest and flame, did not only commune with stars and storms. In certain rites, under crescent moons and winter solstice, they performed acts so sacred that even their descendants refused to name them. In the darkened chambers beneath stone altars, skulls were split, not in violence, but in offering. The cranial fracture was deliberate, ceremonial. The skulls were laid face up, eyes toward constellations unseen from southern lands. The flesh was removed, the marrow exposed. And then the chanting began. Witnesses, few and always marked, claimed that the chants were not prayers. They were instructions, timed to breathe, to pulse, to fear. When the final note fell, the circle tightened. A single figure, always a warrior, always freshly dead, was brought forth. The body was warm, the heart had not long stopped, and the feast began. It was called the Night of the Warrior, a rite performed not in secrecy, but in shadow, witnessed only by the stones, the wind, and the ancestors. The body of the fallen was not desecrated, it was exalted. Draped in leaves of oak and mistletoe, his chest was cut with obsidian blades. No metal touched the flesh. Iron was forbidden, impure. The Druids believed that only the earth could open the body of the brave. From the moment the heart was removed, the clan ceased to be a gathering of men. They became a vessel, for memory, for strength, for communion. The heart was not eaten first, that was reserved for the end. Instead, they began with the limbs, the arms that had once held the sword, the legs that had chased the hunt. Each bite was slow, purposeful, accompanied by chant. It was believed that in consuming the warrior, his soul would not drift. It would remain, split among those who feasted, bound into the breath of their kin. And when the rite was complete, the skull was cleaned, polished, and set upon the altar, its hollow sockets forever gazing toward the mist. Centuries later, when the earth gave up its dead, the bones told stories no scroll dared record. Archaeologists, careful, rational, unbelieving, uncovered deposits of human remains layered, not in graves, but in patterns. Bones cracked open, polished smooth on the inside, teeth filed flat as if worn down by stone bowls. Femurs split cleanly at both ends, stacked in spirals beneath burnt stone platforms. But it was the skulls that spoke the loudest. Some bore ritual carvings, runes etched not for language but for rhythm. The marks matched no alphabet, they echoed sound, as if they were meant to vibrate. Others were found filled with ash and fragments of burned leaf, herbs known to induce trance, painlessness, or paralysis. One jawbone was discovered wrapped in heather and tied with sinew, suspended from the ceiling of a cave chamber that received moonlight only once a year. And in that same chamber, buried beneath centuries of damp soil and rotting moss, they found what no one was prepared for: a bowl, stone-carved, deep, smooth from use, and within it, mixed with clay and crushed bones, human blood, carbon-dated, confirmed. The markings on the edge matched those from the Ogham chant, and beside it, half buried in soil, a child's molar. To eat was not to survive. To eat was to sanctify. Among the clans of the Outer Isles, those shrouded in fog, surrounded by restless sea, food was not sustenance. It was spirit. Each animal had a soul, each plant a memory, and when famine struck, the land was not cursed. It was speaking. The Druids taught that hunger was a summons, a test of spiritual alignment, and in the deepest winters when no deer stirred and no fish bit, the ritual changed. The chosen was not offered, the chosen was selected. Often they were volunteers, elders who had dreamed the raven, warriors who had no sons, women who sang the old songs backward without knowing how. They would fast, they would bathe in ice, they would drink the sacred root until their breath slowed and their heartbeat matched the rhythm of the stone drum. And then, before the altar, they would speak their name only once. After that, silence. The preparation was meticulous. No screaming, no haste. The organs were not removed. The eyes were left intact. The Druids believed that the soul must watch as the flesh ascended. And when the first bite was taken, the entire circle wept. Not from sorrow, from reverence, because in that moment they were no longer eating flesh. They were swallowing fate. In the summer of 1974, a team of archaeologists arrived at the windswept edges of the Hebrides, expecting pottery shards, fishing tools, perhaps fragments of Celtic jewelry. What they found rewrote their silence. Beneath the collapsed cairn, they unearthed a stone chamber sealed with melted pitch, an ancient sealant meant to keep not weather but spirit from escaping. Inside, they found over 40 skulls, none buried, all placed. Each skull faced inward, toward the center of the chamber where a large flat slab stood, stained dark in the middle. The walls bore no decoration, no runes, only hands, dozens of them, small, large, clawed in agony or still in reverence, pressed into the stone. But it was the bones themselves that shocked them. They showed marks, fine, precise, almost surgical, of defleshing, and not once. Some of the remains bore layers of healing, indicating that the same individuals had been partially eaten and then survived. Not once, but multiple times. This wasn't slaughter. This was ritual. And nearby, beneath a pile of shattered clay urns, a journal was found, weather-damaged, but intact enough to read one phrase scrawled across the final page. They did not eat because they were hungry. They ate because they believed it would keep the world turning. At the turning of the year, when shadows stretched longest and the sun hung weakest in the sky, the clans gathered in silence. It was called the Solstice Feast. To outsiders, it was only legend, a myth of blood and winter passed down through whispers. But to those who lived it, it was a convergence of time, of death, of rebirth through consumption. The solstice was not a celebration, it was a bargain. For 3 nights fires were forbidden. Only the embers of the sacred flame, kept hidden beneath the temple mound, remained lit. Those who entered the feast did so blindfolded, led by the sound of drums carved from stag hide and stretched with human skin. The meal was not laid upon tables. It was passed hand to hand, body to body, in darkness. They believed that to eat in light would desecrate the spirit. That true ritual required sensory absence so that the soul could speak without being seen. And they sang, slowly, dissonant harmonies echoing through fog-choked hills. Each verse naming a son that had died, a harvest that had failed, a god that had once demanded flesh and received it. Some say the songs still linger. That, in certain caves along the cliffs, if one listens just before sunrise on the shortest day of the year, one can hear chewing, followed by weeping. The fog was never silent. In the highlands of ancient Gaeldom, the mist that rolled across the moors was said to carry voices, low, layered, echoing through time. The Druids called it the laughter of forgetting, but not all who laughed were dead. The macabre chants sung during the rites of flesh were not composed, they were inherited. Sung without written form, passed through generations by memory alone. These chants mimicked the rhythm of breath in death, the rattle of bone, the pulse of blood slowing into silence. Their melodies twisted unpredictably, designed to unsettle, to summon, to resonate. They were not songs of grief, they were invitations. And the singers often entered trance. By the 3rd verse, many would stop blinking. By the 7th, some bled from the nose. By the 9th, the oldest among them would collapse, eyes rolled back, mouths repeating the final phrase over and over. During excavations in the 1980s, audio recordings captured faint vibrations deep inside a sealed ritual mound in Mull. No wind, no wildlife, just a rhythmic hum, repeated every 13 seconds. The frequency matched the chanting pattern of a known death hymn, one used during rites for children, and the sound has never stopped. There is one question the scrolls avoid, the chants obscure, and the bones whisper too softly. Why the children? Among the most disturbing patterns unearthed in the ritual sites of the Outer Isles is the consistency of juvenile remains, not scattered, not buried, but arranged, kneeling, arms crossed, teeth removed. These were not victims of famine or war. They were selected. Some texts claim they were signs of the veil, children born during eclipses, thunder without lightning, blood in milk, omens, chosen before speech, before sin. Their flesh was said to be clean, untainted by desire, pure in vibration. But the rituals surrounding them were not brutal. They were deliberate, intimate. The child was sung to, anointed with oil, and held, not restrained, by the druidic mothers. Then after the final chant, a blade made of bone pierced the heart in a single motion. The body was not consumed whole. Only the tongue, the heart, and the left hand, each preserved for a different rite, each fed to a different caste, one to the warrior, one to the oracle, one to the sky. The rest of the body was burned, and the ashes kept in pouches worn around the neck. Not all who were consumed vanished. Some became gateways. Among the most feared and revered beliefs in the Celtic fringe was the idea that the act of eating flesh was not an end, but a beginning. That in consuming the sacred body, the eater became something more, or something less. The Druids called it waiting at the door. They believed that the human body, when broken and shared under specific ritual conditions, could serve as a bridge between realms. The bone carried memory, the blood carried will, but the flesh held pathways. Those who partook in the highest rites reported visions, not dreams, not illusions, but vivid crossings, standing in forests they had never seen, speaking tongues never taught, hearing voices from beneath the moss, calling them by names they did not yet know. Some never returned to themselves. In rare sites, ossified altars have been found, their surfaces worn smooth from generations of touch, and carved into the edges, always faint, often hidden, are instructions, ritual positions, breath patterns, dietary restrictions before the rite. It was not consumption, it was navigation. And the priests who crossed over left behind only their teeth, embedded in the stone, still clenched, as if they had tried to bite their way back into the world. The bones don't lie, they carry heat, memory, vibration, and when cracked, they whisper. In the far corners of the Celtic Isles, beneath layers of peat and fog, cups of stone have been found, smooth, shallow, blackened by fire and time. Inside them, fragments, tiny, calcined, human, teeth, knuckles, bits of vertebrae, all crumbled and folded into the stone by ritual heat. These were not remnants, they were recipes. The stone was porous, designed to absorb. Over years, over generations, the vessels became sacred, not because of what they held, but because of what they had held before. To drink from one was not simply to ingest, it was to inherit. Memory through marrow, lineage through liquefied legacy. It was said that each cup knew the names of all who had passed through it, and if the silence was right and the drinker still, it would speak. Let the mouth remember, let the blood repeat, let the silence listen. And when the cup was lifted, the stars dimmed, the wind held its breath, and the world for a moment stood still, as if watching, waiting, remembering, because on these islands to eat was not a crime, it was communion, and even now the stones remember the taste.